Hi to all. So in this video, we will cover the calculations to get the net present value of a project and the decision, the rules to decide whether a project is convenient or not for a company, whether it is worth pursuing a project or not. Okay. So the first thing is that the net present value is quite a simple concept, and I will try to keep this video as brief as possible because the net present value, well, we are just starting from this premise that the fundamental value of a project, the price of any project, the investment that you should um, pay for any project should be, if the project is fairly priced, should be equal to the present value of future cash flow. So that's what we could call the fundamental value of the project. And then if the project is fairly valued, then the fundamental value converges with price. Okay, now you would be okay pursuing the project if the project is fairly valued, but you would be even happier if the price right here, right, is even lower the fundamental value. So that means you're buying something quite cheap. That means you're buying something with a fundamental value of $10 and you're buying it at $8. You're buying it at a price that is cheaper than its fundamental value, right? So what is the net present value telling us? The net present value, we can get it in a couple of steps. The first step is we will calculate the present value of the future cash flows. And then here, right, we will compare it with the initial investment, which we can consider that as the price you're paying to buy a project, right? Is the initial investment. So if your initial investment is less, I'm gonna write it here, than the present value of future cash flows, which is the fundamental value, then you take the project. Okay, and the way we do this is, well, we bring this cash flows to the present value and then we subtract the initial investment. So if your initial investment is less than present value of future cash flows, I was missing an F here, minus initial investment should be positive. And by the way, that is the net present value. If positive, you accept. Otherwise, if the present value, if the initial investment is greater than the fundamental value of the project or than the present value of future cash flows, when you subtract present value of future cash flows, which is the fundamental value of the project, minus what you're paying for this, because you're paying more than what is actually worth, this number would be, the negative net present value would be negative, and therefore you would not choose the project. I'm not even going to write that here in the Excel. Let's think positive about all this problem. Okay, so let's quickly take a couple of steps. Step one, present value future cash flows. I'm always missing that letter, right? And we will focus on this the future cash flows. So this initial investment is happening today, so that is not a future cash flow, so we do not discount it because it is already in the present. Okay, so as we all know, the way to get the present value of each of these cash flows is we take the cash flow, we divide it by 1 plus then the rate. We lock this cell pressing F4 or typing the dollar symbols before the letter and before the number. You can type the dollar symbols here before the letter, before the number. You should be fine. And then we raise this to the power of time. Right? This is very straightforward. And there we go. Now we can scroll this to the right because we scrolled, because we locked the rate. Now here when we look at this last cash flow, we are discounting the last cash flow by dividing it by 1 plus the rate, and the rate is still the reference to the cell where we have the rate is still the same. And because we did not lock the cell with the time, then it has updated. And because we did not lock the cell with the cash flow, it is also updated. So it's perfectly fine. Right now, what is the present value of the future cash flows? We need to add all of these individual present values, and this is the present value of the future cash flows, right? And now, what is the net present value? So that is the fundamental value, by the way. Okay, so if I add this, um, let me see, I don't have this shapes. Perfect. So now this value that we have here is the fundamental value of the project, and now this here is my initial investment, which it's a cash outflow. Money's coming out of our pockets. We're not happy at that day, and then we will get the future cash flows. So now the way to get the NPV is just, and let me write it here. The way to get the NPV is just this value of future cash flows minus the initial investment. Because the initial investment is already negative, I'm simply going to add it. And there we go. That's the net present value. And the rule, I'm having it here again. If the net present value is positive, we accept the project. If the net present value is negative, we reject the project. Now, we can also calculate the NPV of a project using this Excel shortcut. Okay? Or in other words, we can calculate the present value of future cash flows using this Excel shortcut, which is called NPV. Keep in mind, NPV in Excel is present value of an uneven stream of cash flows. It is not net present value, even though it's called NPV. It is PV. It is present value, not NPV. So you will see we will get that same 1,100,953.18. Okay, so we give Excel the rate, comma, and then we select all of these cash flows, and then we close the parentheses, and this number, right? This number shapes. Now I know this number is exactly the same to this number. So that's the present value. So a shortcut, the way in Excel, NPV, Excel shortcut, and NPV, I mean, not NPV, we can also take a shortcut with Excel just by doing the same thing. We're adding this present value of future cash flows and then subtracting the initial investment directly in the same cell. Does that make any sense? So we do NPV 5%, then we select all the future cash flows, then minus, and because that initial investment is already negative, we just need to add it. I'm sorry, we need to add it here. There we go. Okay, so that would be an Excel shortcut. You can do it in two ways. Um, Let me move this actually here and say Excel shortcut. Okay, and that's it. And then we have this, which is the Excel shortcut for the complete net present value. Okay, so we have calculated the net present value, and remember the rule. If the NPV, the net present value, is positive, we accept the project. If it has a negative net present value, we reject the project. A negative net present value implies that the initial investment is higher than the fundamental value of the project or than the present value of the future cash flows. I hope this was helpful. Thank you for your attention.